Hello, everyone, and welcome to another broadcast from the Gate Church. Today, we're going to be taking another look at a strange story from the Bible. Now, I really don't like calling these strange stories, except that it's alliteration. But, it really shouldn't be strange to us, some of these stories, because we should be living the same way these people were as far as trusting God and relying on God and letting God work through us. I think sometimes with some of the more well-known stories, we become so familiar with the story that we forget to look for the encounter that is in the story, and we miss what it is that God has for us in our lives because maybe we look at the story in more of a literary sense or more of just what's commonly taught. Now, today's story is going to come from 2 Kings 5. It is about a little girl who saves a warrior. Now, this warrior is Naaman. I think that's how you say it, right? He is the commander of the commander of the armies of Syria, or some translations call it Aram, I think is how you would say it. But anyways, he's this great commander of the armies, and he's a bad dude. He does a lot of good things for his king because the Lord gives all of his enemies into his hands. But he has one problem, and that problem is that he has leprosy. Okay. So in one of the raids, they picked up a little girl from Israel, and she ends up becoming the servant of his wife. So there's one day they're in their house or whatever, and the girl says, "Oh, if only you could be over there where there's a prophet, and you would get healed if you were with him." And so he hears about this, and he goes to his king and says, "Hey, why don't you send word to Israel and see if this prophet can help us out?" So the king sends a letter to the other king, to the king of Israel, and says, "Hey, I'm sending my commander of my armies over to you, and you're going to heal him." So the king of Israel freaks out a little bit. He's like, "Who am I? I'm not going to heal this guy." And then on comes Elisha, and Elisha says to him, I love Elisha's confidence in this, and I really think that this is the kind of confidence we should have in God. Elisha comes to him and says, "Just let Naaman, just let Naaman come to me, and he shall know that there is a true prophet in Israel." So the king says, "Okay." He sends Naaman out to Elisha, and whenever he gets there, Naaman expects to be able to talk to Elisha. He comes up to the house, and Elisha sends out a messenger that says, "Hey, go wash in the river I think it's 7 times, and you'll be good." Now, Naaman is not happy about this because this is not how he expected things to go. He wanted Elisha to come out to him, wave his hand and make everything okay. But that's not what Elisha decided to do, obviously. And so Naaman walks away. Well, he storms off. It says he turned away in rage and went away in rage. And then his servants come to him and say, "My father, if the prophet had told you to do some great thing, would you not have done it? And how much more then when it was said to you, 'Wash and be clean'?" They're like, "Look, this guy didn't tell you to do some crazy thing. He just told you to go wash in the river." And so he went down and did it just as Elisha had said, and his flesh was restored, and he ends up turning to the Lord. He ends up serving the Lord, and it's just this amazing story to me, because it all starts with the faithfulness of the servant girl. Now, if you look at this servant girl, like, she was taken from Israel, and she became the servant of Naaman's wife. And so she has really no reason other than for the sake of her master and for the sake of the Lord's name. She has no other reason, no personal reason to be telling him this, because she's captured and she's a servant in their household. So you see that she has compassion in here, and that she loves the Lord even through whatever the situation is that she's going through being captured and being taken into another country, because the way she says it, just the words that she uses, and obviously I know it's translated and all that, but I wish that my master Naaman were with the prophet who is in Syria or Samaria, excuse me, and then he would heal him of his leprosy. So the way she says it, it's not like, hey, go to this prophet. It's like, I really wish that you were with this prophet so you could get healed. To me, that shows compassion. It shows that she actually cares for Naaman and she cares for his well-being, which is something that, something that we need to kind of relearn in this modern day and age that a lot of people have forgotten, is how to care for somebody, how to actually care for the people next to you. So Naaman goes and he finally meets Elisha, or kind of sort of meets him. And he has all these preconceived ideas of how the prophet should work and how this healing should happen. He says, basically, he says, I thought he was going to wave his hand, but he didn't even come out to me. And I think that speaks to kind of how sometimes we approach God. We approach God with our ideas of, oh Lord, if you would only do this for me, or Lord, if you would only do that. Whenever God has things that are better in his mind than we could ever have in ours, and his ways are higher than ours. So we need to be able to let go of everything that we think we know, everything that we think should happen, all the things that we think should happen in our lives to make our lives go a certain way, or even for the Lord to have his way in our life. I think sometimes we think that, I'm going to go here, or I'm going to go there, I'm going to go to this nation, I'm going to go to that nation. And then God's like, no, I need you to start cleaning toilets. You're like, what the heck? But you need to obey that. You need to follow that. And just like Naaman did here. And then we have just the faithfulness of Naaman's servants here, just to, they see that he's enraged. They see that he's highly upset. And they still go to him and say, hey, look, this guy, he told you something. And if he told you to do something that seemed crazy to you and something outlandish, some great thing, you would have did it. So why not just go ahead and do what he says and do it? And then he's like, well, okay, then I guess I'll try it. And he goes and does just what he says, and his flesh was restored and he was clean. And it was because of, number one, the faithfulness and the heart of the servant girl that came from Israel. And then also the faithfulness of his servants. Like, without those people in his life, Naaman would have still been a leper. He would have still not known the Lord. And this is how God orchestrates things in our lives sometimes, is if you look at kind of the parallels with this little girl and with the story of Joseph. I mean, just look at the story of Joseph and think about it. He is in slavery that brought freedom to other people. And it's the same way here, that when she was faithful, even in her slavery, even when she was captured and taken to another land, she was still faithful to point people to the Lord, to point people to her God. Then he was able to come to God, and he was able to start following the Lord. And I'm sure that more and more people did because of it. Sometimes things don't exactly look like what we think they should look like, but God has a different plan than what we could ever think. And as long as we are faithful to him, and as long as we follow him, he will let it all work out the way he needs it to. And it's all for, like I said in the live last week, it's not about us. It's about his name. It's about his glory. And he's going to bring about the knowledge of his glory in the earth through that. So I just want to leave you guys with that. I call it another interesting story from the Bible that you probably don't hear too many times. So you guys have a wonderful night, and I'll see you next time.